The manager's face drained of color. "You know him?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The executive nodded, swallowing hard. "Not just know him. He owns one of the largest companies we do business with." The revelation sent shockwaves through the staff. The security guards, who had been so sure of their actions, suddenly looked unsure of themselves. The woman folded her arms, watching as realization dawned on their faces. "So now that you know who he is, do I suddenly deserve respect?" she asked. Her words hung in the air, cutting deeper than any accusation. The entire room fell silent, the weight of the moment pressing down on everyone. The hotel manager stammered, trying to salvage the situation. "Mrs. Carter, please understand. This was all just a misunderstanding." But she didn't need excuses. She needed accountability. Her husband stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "A misunderstanding," he repeated. "You humiliated my wife, accused her without evidence, and treated her like she didn't belong here. Tell me, would this have happened if you knew who she was from the start?" The staff shifted uncomfortably, their confidence crumbling. The hotel executive, realizing the severity of the situation, turned to the manager. "You've just cost this hotel a valuable partnership," he said coldly. "And I can't overlook this." The manager's face paled as the consequences became clear. Then, just as it seemed the situation was settling, Mrs. Carter pulled out her phone and hit record. "An apology isn't enough," she said. "People need to see what really happens behind closed doors." The video Mrs. Carter recorded quickly gained traction online, sparking conversations about fairness and accountability in customer service. The hotel issued a public apology, but the damage had already been done. People began sharing their own experiences, exposing a pattern of similar treatment. The manager, now facing scrutiny, was removed from his position. Despite the ordeal, Mrs. Carter and her husband chose to focus on the bigger picture. They used their influence to advocate for better training and policies that ensured no one else would have to go through the same humiliation. The hotel, under new leadership, implemented changes, hoping to rebuild trust. As they left that night, hand in hand, Mrs. Carter took a deep breath. "It's not about revenge," she said softly. "It's about making sure this never happens again." Her husband nodded, proud of how they had turned an ugly moment into a step toward change. The hotel lobby was buzzing with guests checking in, conversations flowing, and staff moving swiftly to keep things running smoothly. But suddenly, the mood shifted. A well-dressed black woman, confident and composed, stood at the front desk, her expression calm but firm. The receptionist, however, looked uneasy. Within moments, security was called, and whispers spread through the lobby. She had barely spoken a few words before the accusations started flying. A missing item, a suspicious glance, and suddenly she was being treated as if she had done something wrong. The manager approached, his tone sharp and dismissive. "Ma'am, we need to ask you to leave." The security guards stepped closer. But what they didn't know was who she really was, and more importantly, who her husband was. As she reached for her phone, the staff had no idea that their actions were about to backfire in the most shocking way possible. The woman took a deep breath, keeping her composure as the hotel staff continued to press her. Guests in the lobby watched with curiosity, some whispering while others simply avoided eye contact. The security guards exchanged glances, waiting for her to protest or make a scene. But she didn't. Instead, she pulled out her phone and made a single call. The manager folded his arms, sighing impatiently. "Ma'am, this won't change anything. We have policies to follow." His voice was laced with authority, but there was an underlying nervousness he tried to mask. The woman didn't argue. She simply listened to the calm voice on the other end of the line and gave a slight nod. Moments later, the tension in the room thickened. The doors to the hotel lobby swung open, and a group of sharply dressed individuals entered. The staff's expressions shifted from arrogance to confusion. Something was about to happen, and they weren't ready for it. The room fell silent as the sharply dressed individuals moved with purpose. One of them, a tall man in an expensive suit, scanned the scene before locking eyes with the hotel manager. His presence alone sent a wave of unease through the staff. The woman, still calm and composed, put her phone away and folded her arms, waiting. The security guards hesitated, unsure whether to continue their approach or step back. The manager cleared his throat and forced a smile. "I'm not sure what's going on here, but this is a private matter," he said, attempting to regain control. But the suited man took a step forward, his voice steady. "A private matter? You falsely accused my wife, humiliated her in front of strangers, and now you think you can dismiss this." Whispers spread among the guests as employees exchanged nervous glances. The realization was setting in. This wasn't just an ordinary guest, and they had just made a serious mistake. The manager's forced smile wavered as he realized the weight of the situation. The woman's husband wasn't just anyone. His presence commanded attention, and the staff's confidence began to crack. The security guards, who had been so sure of themselves moments ago, took a cautious step back. One of the hotel employees whispered something to the manager, causing his expression to tighten. Beads of sweat formed on his forehead. "Sir, I assure you, this is all a misunderstanding," he stammered, his tone shifting from authority to desperation. But the husband wasn't interested in excuses. His gaze remained locked on the man before him. Guests were now fully engaged, some even recording on their phones. The tension in the air was thick. The woman, still composed, finally spoke. "A misunderstanding? Then explain why your staff assumed I didn't belong here." Her voice was steady, but the weight of her words was undeniable. The manager had no answer. Just as the manager struggled to find his words, a hotel executive rushed in, alerted by the commotion. His eyes widened as he recognized the woman's husband, and a flicker of panic crossed his face. "Mr. Carter," he said, his voice laced with urgency, "I had no idea you were staying with us." The entire room seemed to hold its breath. Murmurs spread among the staff and guests, many now realizing they had made a serious mistake.